Ocean Hub from Cape Town. Is she in the building? Is she out dialing in front of? Awesome.
She's between two dives.
Sometimes we don't know how far we are. Between two dives? That's interesting. Where are you diving, Tanzo?
We're just in the street. She's off.
Yes. I'm not diving. I'm just at home today.
She's off there.
But following my dive group closely to see where's good, actually.
Yeah. And Tato Mweketsi is also with us from Ocean Hub Africa. Can you actually, Tato, can you introduce yourself briefly, what you do at OHA, and then Mweketsi will do the same?
Ethan, can you just give us a signal that we're live on the live feed?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, okay.
Yeah, we are live now.
Great.
Yes. Yeah. So I think I'll just kick us off with a bit of an introduction. So we are Texpand, and I mean, we're involved in coaching, like we've coached some FLL teams in the past, but it's more being focused around the technical aspect. And through David Campy, who's there, Sign-On, and Alexi, we're hoping to expand sort of into helping people out with the innovation project that comes along with FLL. So FLL is more than just like the technical aspect. It's also, you've got to do some research project. So this time, because we're doing ocean themed Into the Deep, well, not Into the Deep, or FLL Submerged, the project is about doing research in the ocean. So we thought connecting with Ocean Hub and hearing about some what they do and some ideas that they might have for the project could be really awesome. So David, you know a lot more about Alexis and what they do there than we do. So I don't know if you could give a more detailed introduction or take it from there.
Connecting the dots on both sides, right? We have 2 3-letter acronyms. Not my favorite things, even though I'm a software guy. We have FLL and OHA. Maybe just expand a bit of the backstory just for the OHA guys on what FLL actually is in terms of how it plays out. And also, I think for people new to FLL who haven't done it before, just to get a feeling for what the F and the L and the L mean. And how
So FLL stands for First Lego League. So it's a competition, so hence the league part, that you compete with robots made out of Lego, hence the Lego part. And it's organized by an organization based in the US called First. And they run competitions like this all over the world. I think FLL is the biggest, and Lego is very popular. I'm sure like almost everyone's built with Lego, but this is very specifically with the Technic Lego, mainly with the using either EV3 or the EV3 or like Spike Prime sort of Lego set. So you're able to program in blocks or in Python or in icon blocks. So it's really friendly for people getting started. And I think it's from, I actually forget what age exactly it is.
It's like 8, from 8 until, it's basically from grades 2 to 7, I think, around there.
No, it's actually, you can go a bit older. I think you can go until grade 9. Or grade 8 or something. But yeah, it's really great to get started with robotics because, as we know, Lego's really friendly to get started with. And the challenges, there's some complicated challenges to get started with, like you're on a mat and your robot drives around, does different missions. And there's some really nice ones that are easy, but there's also more complicated ones. So there's a lot of scope for someone who's just starting off or someone who's actually been in it for a long time. And that's just the like mechanical side, but then there's also the project. So maybe your team isn't too interested in actually building with Lego, but you really like researching and like building little projects and things. Then you can have some of your team who likes the building doing that, and the other part of your team doing the project or researching stuff. To sort of, I think last time it was focused on helping your community with electricity and powering that. So that was also really awesome. So
no, the last one was actually arts.
Yeah. Okay, the last one, the previous one that I did.
Was
about electricity and stuff. So there's a lot of scope and it's really cool.
Yeah, and I think, the guys mentioned a mat. So there's a lot of challenges that happen on a mat. That's an imaginary world with pictures drawn on it, and you have a wheeled robot that'll move around and pick things up. So a very constrained challenge, but it captures the imagination. So this year, for example, you might need to clean up the plastic from the ocean and put it in the house. So your robot
Okay.
can. But then the project part is really what's interesting here. The other thing I think in setting the scene for today that I missed out on is you can see the South African flag and the Texpand logo on the shirt there. So Team Texpand went to the US in the next league. So this is first Lego League. After this comes first Tech Challenge, where they build a big metal robot
Okay.
with an actual arm,
Mhm.
and it has to like compete in a competition. And not only did they go to the USA, they won the world champions. So yeah, we're in the presence of champions, and they came, and their mission exactly.
Yeah.
Their mission is to give back and connect all of their passion for robotics and the place they've got to bring more people along. So that's kind of that side. Hand up to you and your colleagues for what the O and the H and the A are for.
Yeah, 100%. My name is Alexi. I'm the founder of Ocean Hub Africa. O for Ocean, H for Hub, and A for Africa. And I'll give you a little spiel on what we do, but I would like my colleagues here on the call to introduce themselves first. Tondo and then Mwaketsi.
Thanks, Alexi. Thanks, everyone. It's so nice to be with you this morning. It's still morning. So like Alexi said, I'm Tando. I am the venture development lead for Ocean Hub Africa. Quite a new addition to the team, having joined in March. Previously, my background is in marine science, so I'm a marine biologist and physical oceanographer, and then pivoting out into the blue economy through being part of the Ocean Hub Africa team. And I won't say too much because I think Alexi will give a background into what we actually do and what we're aiming for and achieving for. But that's me in a nutshell. Thanks.
Hi guys, I'm also pleased to meet you all. My name is Mwaketsi, but then you can call me Chato. I'm the engineer in residence in Ocean Africa. I basically design low-tech solutions for coastal communities, be it those ROVs and then electric engines for them. So yeah, and also I work a bit more on acceleration programs where I support blue entrepreneurs with technical assistance, and yeah, that's basically me.
Thanks. So you've heard a few new words, perhaps blue economy, blue entrepreneurs, and things like that. And that's what we focus on. Ocean of Africa is an organization based in South Africa, here in Cape Town. For those who are in Cape Town, I assume most of you guys, that helps people and companies create new, exciting solutions to protect our ocean and make them more sustainable, right? Tackling pollution, making sure that we use the resources that comes from the ocean, the fish, for example, in a more sustainable way. We focus on developing technology and ideas, and that's what Mwaketsi was talking about around the technologies that can help communities and the environment to thrive together, right? Especially by creating solutions to problems that affect their livelihoods as people, and I was about to say the livelihoods of the biomass in the ocean, but the life of what is in the ocean essentially. So why are our oceans important? The ocean covers 70%, almost 3/4 of our planet. We call it planet Earth, but for what it's worth, it's actually blue planet. It's more ocean than land. 70% of the surface is water and it's ocean. That's just the surface. If you start going deep, in terms of volume, we're way more of an ocean planet than a planet Earth. And it's these ecosystem that the ocean hosts is the home of millions, hundreds of millions of species that are currently experiencing, I don't want to be too dramatic, but climate change, let's put it that way, which is a threat. It's a big threat for them. And to a large extent, we depend on those species thriving because they provide us with food, the fish, with oxygen that we breathe. All the plants, all the seaweed and the plants in the ocean provide up to 50% of the oxygen in our atmosphere. 50%. Every other breath that you take actually comes from the ocean, right? And it helps regulate climate. It's an ally to mitigate climate change, right? That's why it's very important. And obviously all the numerous people, especially here in Africa, that are living near the ocean and depend on the ocean, right? So we're trying to support that thriving sweet spot between ocean and people. And that's our mission. I wanted to dive into a few ocean challenges, sort of high level. I talked about pollution, the exploitation of resources, and climate change. I'm going to dive into some more kind of clear examples of what that means, because these are typically the type of challenges to keep in mind when thinking about a solution, a robotics-based solution. This is not an exhaustive list. If you have any questions, obviously, we'll have a bit of time in 2 minutes. I'm going to have another 2 or 5 minutes to talk about those things, and then we'll dive into Q&A, and then colleagues can join in if they want to add some stuff.
Do you have any visuals you'd like to put up? Can I screen share them from here, or do you want to join and present?
I don't have much, but
just,
you can Google as we go along.
Yeah, I'll live Google for you. Yeah.
Plastic pollution. I should have prepared some visuals. Sorry about that. Plastic pollution. So we talk about pollution. 3 main challenges to the ocean: pollution, exploitation, climate change. Pollution is vast. There's different types of pollution. Most of the pollution that is affecting the ocean and marine life comes from land, about 80%, right? It could be in the runoffs, in the rivers, and the freshwater streams that end up in the ocean, dragging chemical products or plastic. I don't know if you've been on the beaches around Cape Town, but often you can find little bits of plastics. Plastic pollution is a big threat to marine life because the fish and other animals, they see those little floating things and they think it's food because it enters the ocean as a big water bottle, right, plastic bottle, but it disintegrates, it breaks down into smaller parts that look like a little shrimp, for example, right, or baby fish, and the other fish, they engulf them, eat them, thinking it's food, but they can't digest the plastic, so it gets stuck in their stomach, never moves from the stomach, fills up to a point where sometimes there's not enough space for food to actually enter into the stomach. Every year, millions of tons of plastic end up in the ocean and harming marine life. Fish, turtle, dolphins, everybody's affected. Overfishing is another problem, right, in terms of exploitation of ocean resources. Many fish populations are decreasing today because too many fish are being caught. One of the reasons is because of the fishing techniques that are being used, because of the lack of understanding what's happening on the water when the net is in the ocean, and the concept of bycatch, because it's such a huge net that they pour into the ocean. This might be a bit graphic, if you Google bycatch. Okay, because the net is so huge and it's not discriminating between the fish that you actually want to fish, like a sardine, for example, and the other fish that you do not want to fish, but it just happened to be, there when you throw your net in the ocean, like a whale, like a turtle, like a seal. You can see a seal at the bottom right there. These are unintentional catches that are affecting marine life and contributing to overexploitation of our oceans, essentially. Overexploitation, pollution, climate change. Climate change is warming our oceans, right? It's causing coral reefs to bleach, to essentially to die, right? And it's making sea level rise around the world, and that affects coastal communities, right? Obviously, they were living by the seashore, on the shores. Water level rises, taking over their homes and dragging along a lot of waste back into the ocean. These are different threats and challenges that are linked to climate change. Ocean acidification is also a big one. The fact that you've probably heard of global warming caused by greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, CO2. I don't know if I'm getting too technical, but this gas that comes out of exhausts. So when we burn fossil fuel, petrol in your car, or coal in the power plants across Africa, all that dark smoke that you see is usually filled of, amongst many other things, carbon dioxide, CO2. And this is a greenhouse gas. This is a gas that goes into the atmosphere and creates a greenhouse effect, keeping the warmth, the heat of the rays of the sun, heating Earth, right, entering into our atmosphere. And the more CO2, carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere, actually in a gas form, the more gets to enter into the water, dissolves into the water of our ocean. That changes the chemical composition of the ocean. And that has for consequence to turn the ocean more acidic. And more acidic means it eats out the little shells of the baby fish, baby shellfish, or even affects, corals. And you can see in the middle, the corals are bleaching here. And that these animals are ecosystems, such as corals, which is an animal, by the way, are the bedrock of all marine life. All marine life starts small, with a very fragile and thin protective layer, a shell, and the fact that the water is more acidic, more corrosive, is that a word in English? Yeah. Affects their chances of survival from, baby to a fully grown and mature marine animal. So these are examples of challenges. I can dive into a few examples of what robots can do. I've been told by David that you have built in the past, that's the logo, built in the past a robot that will help coral reefs, right? Breaking a little bit of a piece of a coral that has been resilient to the different heat waves or to the acidification of the ocean. So that particular species is resilient. It can survive in harsher conditions, the harsher conditions that we're going to be getting moving forward because of climate change. And what it's trying to do is breaking a little bit of that resilient coral and planting it somewhere else, right? So it can multiply itself faster. That's a very interesting approach to using robotics to tackle, coral bleaching and coral reef restoration. The robots that could help fishermen in some places where we could monitor the fish population and protect endangered species, perhaps, could be an idea, gathering data on where the fish are and how many are there, so they don't catch too many and they catch the ones that they're actually targeting, not the bycatchers that we were talking earlier. You've heard Tato Mwekitsi earlier talking about ROVs, remotely operated vehicles. We could use underwater drones to explore the deep sea or to explore areas that are harder to get to for coastal communities, to study marine life there, to monitor the health of the coral reefs without harming the environment, and help us learn more about what's actually happening underwater, and track even pollution, for example. And nice segue into another, perhaps a last example, little robots that could, and David, you mentioned that example, that could contribute to cleanups, ocean cleanups, go and identify what is floating and is a debris, is plastic, is a waste, captures this and brings it back to shore in a safe space where we could, treat them and recycle, sort and recycle as much as possible. And it has to have kind of an intelligence because it has to get around, but also it must not catch fish, right? Focus on the plastic bottles and other waste, but not catch fish, right? These are simple examples that I thought of. I should have got a few images. Thanks for helping me with that, David. So yeah, I mean, how you can help is that now that you've learned how important the ocean is, right, to everyone, not just people on the coastlines, even though for them it's a bit more important, they're more vulnerable to the ocean as well. You also know that everybody depends on it, right? Every other breath that you take comes from the ocean, but it faces a lot of challenges. So we can think about how robots could be part of the solution. And I think that's what really we're trying to do here.
So I think, taking some questions now would be cool, but also I think we kind of see the problem and we see the general space. Are there any inspiring stories from Tando, Maketsi, yourself, about things that are actually happening to get those imaginations going?
In terms of
something that
robotics
come through the lab. Maketsi said he built a robot to do something. What did you do with that? I heard Tando diving. What are you doing? Like what? Let's connect to what's alive. Yeah?
Okay. Tato.
I can go ahead. I was thinking about maybe the engine project that's going on right now. Piece like putting up a simple, low-tech, basic solution for the community that they can replace the diesel engine and opt for electrical engine instead. So this will be more of like renewable energy, where they'll have like maybe a BES system that is maybe storing some energy from solar, and then while they're done using maybe the electric engine, they get to charge it with their battery, and that's going to be a retaining thing. So they don't have to spend all that their money on buying diesel. So those simple solutions that help them to like reduce the cost of living in the coastal regions.
Can I add to this, Tato?
Okay.
You were back. Were you done? I want to add to this whole.
No, you can add.
Okay. So what Maketsi was talking about now is very interesting. Small-scale fishermen around the coastlines are using boats with a small engine to go out to the ocean and fish, right? The fish that they need to sustain themselves. The engine that they've been using is the engine that you all know, which is a diesel-powered, fuel-power engine with this propeller right at the bottom. The problem with diesel is expensive. It's polluting. There's always a bit of leakages in the ocean. Sometimes in the boat, the fishermen, they put the fish in the boat, which contaminates the fish. It's all around a bad thing, and it's generating greenhouse gases. I was saying earlier, contributing to acidification of our oceans. So looking at a solution, electric solution is definitely interesting, but we want to do more than this. Do you know any animal on the planet or anything that moves itself using a propeller naturally? No, it doesn't really exist. But if you look at how the fish, who's been evolving in the ocean for billions of years, maybe hundreds of millions of years, they use kind of a wave system or a fin system. They have evolved into creating very energy efficient ways of getting around into the water. So perhaps looking at an electrical engine, but not powering a propeller, but something that creates a wave, like a dolphin undulates, for example, or the tail of a smaller fish, based on biomimicry, which is the principle of looking at what nature does with its 3.8 billion years of natural R&D, research and development, and trying to transpose that into mechanical engineering systems. So yeah, that's a way to look at solutions, looking at what nature does naturally. It's called biomimicry, and trying to transpose that into mechanical engineering systems.
So I think what's really interesting about that is we're not inventing a whole new robot or something that's a complex system. It's actually looking at something that already exists and figuring out how to introduce a robotic mechanism that makes it work better. So we don't have to dream up the entire
100%
soup to nuts invention for it to actually be really amazing.
And reduce the number of moving parts. We want the maintenance, because this is targeted to coastal communities in particular. It has to have a strict minimum number of parts, so that maintenance is easier. Doesn't require to have studied mechanical engineering and doesn't require to stockpile little pieces and bolts and nuts and things like that.
So simplicity would be a good thing to focus on in your project. So when you do your project and explain how it is designed to stay this focused on simplicity, because that means it can be used in coastal communities.
Yeah. I can see Michelle saying it doesn't have to be robotic solutions.
Okay. Any sorts of solutions? I had mapped it into robotics. Michelle, do you maybe want to give us a little bit more space on the solution space for the FLL project then? Do you want to unmute and give us some explanation, or Josh, I see you're unmuted and explain the sorts of solutions that can happen?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I haven't done much with FLL. Ethan's anymore, but he's going to come now, I think. But it's more just looking at any way that you can help in that space. So it's like the theme of FLL this year is ocean, but it's more just like you've got the robot that completes challenges that are kind of related to like the theme of into the deep, the ocean, or whatever. But it's kind of the idea of just thinking through, here are the problems, like we've gone through very helpfully for everyone. How can we solve that? Not even with robotics, just generally. So one of the things I wanted to ask that I think could be helpful is that going into this, where can you talked about like climate change, the ocean warming, the ocean getting more acidic, whatever. Is there some place that people can go and look and find the actual kind of metrics for that, how much it's increased over the last couple of years or whatever? Because when doing the FLL project, you often need to like talk through your thinking and why this is a problem first, and then offering your solution. You know what I mean? So I think that, yeah.
Yeah, this is where Tondo comes in. And Tato, were you done before? Sorry, because I've jumped in your example of robotics, but did you cover all what you wanted to cover? Yeah? Okay, cool. Now, Tondo, tell us about diving and about where do we get all those data?
Cool, yeah. I have a couple of points to add on, and they may like repetitions of what Tato and Alexia said. But before I answer your question, Josh, I wanted you guys to think around maybe a little bit more holistically when we think about innovation and solutions. Because I think one of the problems that we kind of always get ourselves into as humanity is creating a solution that's also creating a problem as we go. And so I think it's always interesting to when you're creating that solution, how do you make that solution also sustainable itself? And that's particularly true for the ocean, right? So in my previous job, it was one of my tasks we had a plastics tracker. We made a tracker that was speaking to satellites. But it was made out of plastic and other types of unsustainable materials. And so what we were developing using like bamboo, how do you waterproof bamboo, sort of like using sustainable materials in that way to then create longevity for the ecosystem, but also thinking around how we can make our own solutions sustainable. So that's like the big umbrella point that I kind of wanted to make, is that the innovation that we're busy with and the innovation that we should build towards should also be sustainable and build towards some sort of circular economy, right? Extending the life of your product as well. What does that look like? Lexi spoke around a little bit about maintenance. How do you keep your maintenance low? How do you keep your maintenance sustainable? And then the examples that you guys were saying, which are really cool, around a robot potentially picking up plastic, it would be also interesting. I don't know if it falls part of the scope of the project and the competition, so maybe Michelle and you guys can correct me, but think about once that plastic has been collected, where is it going to go? What's it going to feed into? I'm just thinking a little bit more holistically around how your innovation is fitting into already what is existing, I think is a good idea. And then also the technical aspect about working in the ocean. You know, having done a lot of like field work, deploying a lot of instrumentation, the first thing that people will tell you is like waterproof, from a technical perspective of protecting your electronics, but also the physical damage. So you might be deploying something in Cape Town where we know that our conditions are different to those on the East Coast. or maybe if you're deploying your robot in, in Mozambique where the water's super flat. So when you think about physical damage of your robot, what does that look like in different sort of ocean conditions? Sometimes you have really rough oceans, sometimes you have really flat oceans. And that will be important on how you would design your robot. Similarly, actually, with rivers, you might be designing something that is quite robust and maybe quite heavy, but if you want to deploy it in like a river stream, that might not be able to work as much because there's not as much volume, there's not as much flow rate. So you really need to also think about what environment that you're deploying your innovation into. It could be something that's environment agnostic, meaning that you can deploy it anywhere, or maybe your solution is very specific to a certain type of condition. So to answer your question, so going all the way back around to where we can find data, there's actually a really cool report that's actually come out, and I'll find the link when I stop talking, so I'm going to struggle to multitask now, from the UN called the State of the Ocean Report, and they just published one now, and it basically gives a really great overview. It's a long document, so what I suggest that you do is read it online, do some Control F, finding like just key things that you want to look through. But we also have a stack of resources at Ocean Hub actually that we share with during our presentations, or where you can read up on different types of data. What I also want to say, we have amazing research like scientists putting out papers and contributing to these global reports. Also look at citizen science sources, because citizen science sources are particularly interesting because they provide data where scientists normally don't go, or don't have the time to go, or the resources to go. So it could be a specifically niche environment that people are looking at and reporting on that your normal everyday non-scientific community is collecting data on. So what I'll do while you guys are chatting some more is find those things and share them here as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's very helpful, thanks. And I think what you talked about as well in terms of keeping stuff sustainable is a big thing, because I mean, the scope of the competition doesn't necessarily have to include that, but it's like you're judged based on the other team's projects as well, right? It's a comparison thing. So taking your project to the next level by thinking through the whole process of not just collecting the plastic, but how you're collecting it, is it sustainable, and then after you've collected it, where does it go? Will definitely take your project to the next level, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it.
Yeah. So I did find the report Alexia was mentioning. It's a lot of data, so hard to digest, but if you love stats and data, you can try to jump in there and find anything. And then also from the MCS UK link, there's facts and stats to kind of dive into. But all I did in my Google was I searched for I searched up ocean health statistics. And you'll find tons and tons of resources and look around on them. But if there's something specific that you're into, also we're now plugged into the hub. So if you have a question, you can also send it in and ask, like, how would I find out how much kelp has grown in this area? And then Alexia can activate the network and find stuff for you. So we are an ecosystem. I know, like a coral reef, you touch one part of it and it all knows about it. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so can we pop across some questions?
Yeah.
Anything coming in via the Discord? I think it's Josh, you and Ethan, you're managing the live channel. So if there's anything else coming in, so yeah. I'll hand across to you to do a Q&A session. And anybody in the call is, of course, welcome to pop it if you want to ask. Yeah. Or write it in the chat, and then we'll give across to you when you have a moment, either in the live chat, in the call, the YouTube chat, or in the Discord. Those are all places where we could take messages in. Ethan and Josh.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're on the call as well, you can just unmute yourself and ask a question there.
It's often quite hard to unmute oneself in a large room of more than 10 people. So writing a message and being invited can be easier. So if that makes sense for you, do that. But if you want to just unmute and tell us stuff, I see Ben Anderson, Sipe Donga, Michelle, who we know if she wants to say anything, Colleen, Alan, Herland, and Odwa. So everybody in the room, if you want to say something in or ask some questions, or just give some feedback to the team, that'd be great. Ethan and Josh, over to you.
Yeah. I've just got a question. Are there any, I know we talked a lot about robots and there's a lot of focus on robots because this is like a robotics competition. But what we've seen with like past seasons in their projects is they're not like strictly robotic solutions. I think we've seen some where, well, for the electricity generation, it was mainly robotics, but some people had things where they had ideas of generating electricity through plants or like something like that, where it's not strictly like robotics that they're mainly dealing with. Do you see any? Are you aware of many solutions to some pollution problems or other things that aren't robots?
Oh. Yes, there are. So actually, you just sparked something quite interesting. The ocean is obviously under a number of threats, as we've discussed, but it's not only a victim. It can also be a solution to a lot of problems, right? And there's been a design, not from our cohort study, as you're scrolling through, but
I'm not sure.
There's been a chemical-based solution using ocean water, seawater, to generate electricity for small torches. So using the ions, the chemical composition of the ocean to act as a battery, essentially, creating a bit of light in a very obviously renewable way. And so that's been one that is not a mechanical engineering system, and it's helping children around coastal Africa and around the world to be able to study a bit later in the evening when the sun sets, for example, helping them to have to be more successful at school. I'm going to try to think of another. Yeah. Sorry.
Hello, Silvery. Yeah, you that's fine. You have a question?
Ask that all of you guys mute yourselves. That's going to make it a lot easier.
Okay.
Okay, I muted them so that we can find the questioner. So what's happening is everybody in the classroom has going through your microphone. So if someone wants to ask a question, everybody else, you can just turn your speakers down quiet.
Unmute yourself, Caitlin.
There we go. That works. We can hear you now.
Hello.
Yeah, just
Okay, do you have a question? If you'd like to ask a question.
stay. You need only one person at the mic at a time. Only one person. Everyone else should stay muted.
Is there someone sincerely that would like to ask? Put your hand in there if you want to be asked a question on the camera. And the team can help you ask your question. Okay.
We get there.
So everybody's muted now. Can you unmute? So red hoodie, you have no. Okay.
Okay. We have some questions from the YouTube live chat. If we go
Okay.
to those first.
The
First one would be, I've seen videos about some of the ocean cleanup and trash cleaning robots. Are these starting to make a difference?
Can you repeat that? Sorry, I was distracted.
I've seen videos of ocean cleanup and trash robots.
Yes.
Are they starting to make a difference?
Sorry about that. Kind of moment. Yes, I mean the short answer is yes, absolutely. But the sad news is that 5 years ago there was about 8 million tons of plastic entering our oceans every year. And since then we've used those robots, those litter booms and things like that, and now we're at 11 million per year. So it's not retaining as much as enough. Yeah, we're increasing the consumption and the wastage of plastic faster than what those robots or litter booms and things like that are able to pick up. Two interesting things about plastic pollution and ways of capturing or limiting the overspill. The ocean, it's one big ocean, right? There's different basins, but it's one interconnected ocean. We talk about the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean, but it's actually one. And this is due to currents. I'm speaking, but Tondo is the expert here. To currents, and these currents kind of at some point will and create massive plastic or waste gyres. So patch concentrates the plastic into huge patches in the ocean, making it somewhat, for whatever still is floating because it hasn't been disaggregating, easier to collect. But that takes a long time before a bit of plastic, a bottle of plastic, for example, entering the ocean here in Cape Town, for example, gets dragged into those massive gyres. And in the process, it might end up in the stomach of a whale and never get actually to that gyre and never be collected there. So that's one piece of information. So usually the plastic floats between 1 meter below the surface to the surface, right? The other thing that's interesting in the collection of waste of plastic is actually trying to curb it and stop it at the source before it enters the ocean. And there was a nice, if you go up, yeah, this one, this graphic, yeah, the little, not right, the drawing here, this one, these are the gyres. This is where plastic actually is condensing at the moment. And the biggest one, the number one, is the Great Plastic Patch in the North Pacific. And so they use those litter booms. So a lot of the plastic comes from, obviously, almost all the plastic comes from land. People toss it, instead of putting it in the bin, toss it on the floor sometimes, or straight in the river. But even if it's on the floor, because plastic has a tendency to be buoyant, to float, when it rains, it's being dragged into water streams, rivers, and those rivers end up in our ocean, dragging along the plastic that was thrown in the middle of hinterland in South Africa. You don't even realize, but it's actually all ending up in our ocean. So they're creating exactly those litter booms on freshwater streams, on rivers, before it gets into the ocean to stop the plastic from entering it into the ocean, so that it's not in contact with the salty water that degrades the plastic faster into microplastics. And it makes it also easier. It's a little easier to collect because it's one entry point where there's a lot happening and entering the ocean. After it's entered the ocean, it's scattering and makes it a lot harder to collect. So to answer your question, I mean, in a nutshell, yes, it's making good progress, but there's still a lot to be done to make it either more efficient or even better, to stop the hemorrhage at the source, right? We're talking about, look at a water basin, like, you turn the tap, plug or put the plug in, water will start overflowing, right? Because the tap is on. You can either take a sponge or a scoop and scoop out the water that is overflowing and you'll have constantly, to be doing this, or you can cut the tap. And that's what we're trying to do with the plastic, in the ocean. Collecting what's been the overflow is important because we want to dry the kitchen floor, but we'll be only able to do this for so long. The water will still be overspilling up, constantly if we don't turn the tap off. So that's another thing. How do we stop using plastics? What are alternatives to plastic out there? Is an important way of tackling this challenge.
All right. Yeah, that's great. There is another one on the YouTube live if we don't have any elsewhere. There's one in the chat.
There's one about an electromagnet.
Okay.
It says, when you talk about robotics, the first thing that comes to mind is an electromagnet. Won't electromagnets affect marine life in any way?
Good question. Tondo.
I was actually typing there to save a bit of time, but the short answer is yes, and it's unfortunate that EMF does affect a lot of marine life for different reasons, depending on the species of the animal. So it could be for navigational purposes when they're trying to migrate. It could be for finding food sources, or communicating with one another, especially when you're speaking about like super social species like dolphins or orcas, and animals like that. So there's different reasons why having, sorry, there's some construction next door, if there's background, sorry about that. So there's different reasons why the electromagnetic field can be disruptive to marine species, and we have to be super aware of this. And there has been discussion, it's in debate when you look around the process of environmental impact assessments. We understand that technology is not going to stop and it's going to keep on going. So when we have these debates, as much as we'd love to say, no, don't use robotics or don't use technology, the conversation needs to be healthy in the sense of what can we do better to safeguard these animals. And some of the suggestions that have come about are around routing or understanding where you're deploying or setting out your instrument. So if you know it's in the route of, maybe southern right whale migration paths or humpback whale migration paths, you don't want to deploy your technology there that's going to disrupt that pattern. Or where you have a resident species of sharks or rays in a specific area, you don't want to deploy your technology there. It could be at certain times of the year and seasons, it could be a seasonal thing, or it could be a permanent thing. So that's the first one, is to avoid areas where these animals might be moving across or are resident or permanently there. And then the second stronger suggestion is normally around the frequency of the electromagnetic field or the technology that is being used, because again, depending on the different species, they use different frequencies to communicate and do their navigation. So those are the two ways to sort of, the word is to mitigate, which is almost to de-risk, to find better ways for something that you can't completely avoid. But then, of course, when we were speaking a little bit earlier, we said, okay, if we are going to be making these innovations, how do we make them more sustainable? So if you can find an alternative to, let's say, an electromagnet, then that would be great as well, because you'd be finding alternative and more sustainable ways. So that's my longer answer to the short answer of yes, and it's bad.
Cool. I think that was a great
Real. This is one of my favorite things to look at. If anyone wants to have a look, you can go to marinetraffic.com, and this is a live view based on the data coming in via satellite and transceivers of where every ship is in the ocean right now. And if you zoom right in, you can then see those routing channels that she was talking about. You can see how we route there. And if we found out that maybe a blue whale pod used this area here, we might try to make a change,
Yeah.
even though it would cost more fuel to go around it to conserve those animals. So you can see the boats moving here. And for every boat here, it's fascinating. If anyone wants to have a play, you can click on it and you can see this is a cargo vessel. It was received 17 minutes ago via satellite. You can see some information on it. There's also Marine Traffic 24. There's a couple of sites like this. So if you just Google marine traffic, this one wanted me to pay for it, which I'm not paid for on this plan. But I think this ship radar here will probably do the work. And you get these live views of where the ships are around the world, which is just really fascinating. So if I take us down to,
In Europe.
yeah, but I'm just going to click on one of these ships here, and you can see here, this is you can see the name of the ship, how fast it's going, what its draft is, where it's going from, where it's going to, which if you want to get a feeling for ships and what's happening in the ocean, is really interesting. And that's just out there. You can do the same for airplanes too, but we're talking about the ocean today.
Yeah. That's really awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a cool
I like
slide.
that. I like that.
Yeah.
So do you have a Global Fishing Watch?
Global Fishing Watch, we can have a look at. Yeah.
Same with fishing vessels.
Global Fishing Watch. So this is filtering that list right down to transparency for who's fishing what, where.
What would be funny is to compare Global Fishing Watch and your all boats data and see
Yeah.
the ones that are not declaring their.
You can actually filter for fishing boats on the other one. How do I get it? Okay, so we've got our map. I just want to close this. So now we have a map of
It's going to give you a
where
lot of
people
data
have been fishing.
and water temperature and a few other things, I think.
So this is one cool place to go and explore and find some interesting data you might be wanting to know.
Yeah.
And getting to know what's happening on these maps will take you like hours of fishing per square, which is a 32,000 kilometers square. So you can see these are heavily fished waters. These are less heavily fished waters out here.
Because they're dangerous waters.
Yeah.
Howling winds and big waves.
Yeah.
Icebergs are gonna come chasing you over there.
Yeah.
On the topic of data and stuff, we have another question in the YouTube chat. Is there satellite or any other imagery that shows where the worst sources of dangerous waste gets into the oceans? Like, where's it come from? Or do all plastics get into oceans from pretty much every river and coast? I think you touched on it.
So yeah, I think on the website of the Ocean Cleanup, so the Ocean Cleanup map, I think has that. I'm checking this out.
There's a plastic tracker there. I just missed it. Okay, there we go.
Plastic tracker.
Yeah.
It's like
So-
space. It was like the plastic tracker, the same thing that NASA is doing for all the space junk, but it's now.
I would imagine, yes.
If we type in Cape Town as our location, it says, okay, let me show you where your plastic from Cape Town might go to. So it's using a mathematical model to say your piece of plastic is going to go around the ocean current and end up here in this garbage patch here, which is the gyre.
Yo, that's actually very cool.
That's awesome.
And
Well, not awesome.
Well, it's not awesome, yeah, but it's a cool visualization.
Or awesome in the old sense of the word, which actually means terrifying.
Oh, yeah, that's all. But there's I think there's another map that maybe it's within this one, shows you that I think I don't know where you have the numbers. I think the vast majority, I don't know, like 2/3 to 3/4 of our plastic, the plastic that ends up in the ocean comes from 100 different rivers around the world. I don't know, the millions of rivers. And they've kind of identified that. Oh yeah, there you go. The Gulf of top 1,000, river, not 100. So that's a map that shows where are the most of the rivers that are contributing the most to plastic pollution in the ocean. And usually these are longer streams that that bring debris and waste from quite far inland, or exactly close to bigger cities. And a lot of them have sometimes reliable system.
Almost a million tons. What? Oh, a million tons.
But yeah,
kgs, a
in
million
Milton. Yeah.
Yeah, from this tiny little river here. I mean, it's not even a big river in the scale of things.
Oh, that's quite crazy.
And imagine having a boom in that river, you could stop it all.
Yeah. So it's thousands of parts per million kg.
Yeah.
Tondo?
Thanks. Yeah, I just want to add a comment around the river thing because we've been speaking about it a little bit, and seasons. So typically, when we look at the discharge or when the plastic pollution enters the ocean from the river, it's always interesting to find that depending on where you are in the world, it can be more on during your rainy season, because in your drier seasons, right, your rivers sort of like their flow rate decreases and they become drier. So the plastic sort of builds up in the river or on the banks of the river. But then when the rains come through and they increase the flow rate of the river and more water comes through, it starts to flood that riverbank and therefore, carry all of that plastic a lot more down into the ocean. And so thinking again around your innovation and what you're making and when you're going to deploy it and when would be the best time to deploy it. Again, those seasonal sort of thinking comes into play there. Just thinking around more water flow, carrying more rubbish into the ocean when it's wetter rather than your drier seasons.
Folks, I need to jump off, but I'll leave you all hands. And looking forward to more conversations. If you have any questions, send them to David, and we'll try to pull the strings that we have to provide some answers.
And I think I'll trap Alexi while he's on camera now to say that we'd love to have you come and visit sometime with the robots that you made for the contest, and maybe we can have an exhibition of your projects and really share at the hub what's been happening.
Sounds
good. Meet with Tando and everybody when we're done with the competition or as you're going. So as you have questions, please send them through. But also we'd love to see what comes out. And the hub is a great space. We're here at the aquarium in Cape Town. So always a good excuse to come and see some fish. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Cool.
Thank
How you contact you if they would like to send questions?
Through David.
Through me, through you. So Team Texpand is the gateway. Like you guys can do everything, and then pass everything through to me and Alexi, and we'll contact them back. So, and we'll probably the right way to do it. We can create a Google Doc where you can put the questions in, and then myself, Tato, Alexi can weigh in with answers, and everybody else can look at them, and we can learn from each other. So not just in emails, we'll have a document, and people can read questions other people have. And that's what I would suggest we do. So after this, we can set up that document, but people can just send the questions on Discord, on the YouTube chat, or via email or WhatsApp to you guys as Texpand, because they're really running this network of FLL wonderfully. So.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. That sounds great.
I think that's it then. I don't think we have any other questions. So
we don't have other questions here. So I hope that for everyone who's joining us on the call now and also online, I hope that is some really great inspiration, and also that for the questions that were asked, that we were able to answer them effectively. And thanks again to David Campy and to Lexi and Tando, and all the other people who joined us from Silverley Primary and Ocean Hub and everyone else as well. It's really great hearing so many insights and so many of the different problems that the ocean, that there are caused in the ocean, and so many solutions that we can work on developing.
Thank you, guys. It was great to be with you all this morning, afternoon, and we'll talk soon over the Google Doc.
It's been a pleasure having you guys.
Thanks so much.
Guys,
Have a good weekend.
yeah, you guys too.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. That was fantastic. And yeah, good to be building our community. I think the Ocean Hub talks about the coral reef as the metaphor for building a community that holds and supports each other. And the octopus is for innovation. So let's get our tendrils out there and start innovating and figuring out what we can do. And then the other animal that they talk about at the hub is the dolphin for love. So we all actually love to see it happen and how we can get together. So let's make the circle bigger, as we say in Cape Town. I see the children are all joining from Silverley. I don't know if anybody wants to ask something from that classroom. Josh and Ethan, I know children have traveled from different schools to be there. So I don't know if we make some time available for just connecting in there also.
Yeah. Well, I will be around there. We'll be doing other training sessions over there. So if they do have questions, then we can write them down, present them to you, and then give them answers at some other point.
So to everybody in the call who hasn't talked today, thank you so much for listening, and all the people who listen from the future on the recording. Ethan's your main man, and Josh, they'll help us get connected. And Josh, yes, Ethan's pointing to the authority. Yeah, from my side, thank you very much. I'm so excited we could make this connection, and it'll make the FLL challenge richer, and it'll make the Ocean Hub richer in connection.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you all very much.
Bye.
Ciao.